It's always. Welcome to Rev Shots, your weekly dose of quick hit wisdom, where we tackle the most pressing topics of the day for ourselves and our revenue teams. Our show features expert guests with decades of experience. We delve into what works and why, sharing tools to be unapologetically successful, from making our number to delighting our clients. If you're ready to boost your knowledge in under 30 minutes on a weekly basis, tune in. Follow me on LinkedIn or join our mailing list to stay updated on our latest features. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for our weekly show, Rev Shots. We are on episode 51, believe it or not. And just like we said in the intro video there, yeah, we made it, right? Last year was our practice year. It's our gap year. I'm just kidding for everybody that joined. It was amazing. And we have an amazing group joining us today. Mike Rizzo, you and I have known each other for a very, very long time, 10 plus years. I think that's fair. Yeah. And love everything you're doing with the marketing ops community. I am learning a ton from you as we try to do our own events over here at Revenue by Design without looking like a bunch of monkeys trying to hump a doorknob. So that's how it's rolling today, everybody. I don't normally talk like that, but there you have it. So Mike,
I appreciated that. It was great.
It's so easy to have the ideas. It's so much harder to bring those ideas to life and be persuasive and bring people along with your ideas and then execute this amazing event, which you have done so well with Marketing Ops. So really excited to have you join us. And we are joined with John and Chris today. And we are going to do a quick round of introductions. And we are going to talk with you today about their level of expertise and what they're seeing in the marketplace. Everybody, that's what we're talking about on Rev Shots, is bringing our guests on who have this deep expertise. What are they hearing and what are people doing about it to be unapologetically successful? So Mike, why don't you kick us off and introduce yourself, please?
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mike Rizzo. I'm the CEO and founder of MarketingOps.com, and it is officially the home of the MoPros community, which stands for Marketing Operations Professionals, believe it or not. And so we exist to basically just shape, elevate, and support the vocation for those that are currently or aspiring to be successful marketing operations professionals.
I love that. And such a great community as well. And so, John, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm John Kazarian. We exist to support organizations like Mike in helping them to run their events by providing technology to facilitate everything from event websites and registration process to the on-site experience with badge printing, mobile app for attendees, and everything in between. And along the way, we integrate with great partners like Chris well, I'll let Chris kick it off and explain.
Sounds good. Chris, thanks for joining us today as well.
I'm going to put my hat on backwards as well, Mike. Oh. So we can...
All right, I'll join the team on that.
Yeah, there you go.
I've got this light on, so it's like, it's shadows. I don't know.
It's all right. I'm Chris Carver. We at Session Board, we are really hyper-focused on automating the speaker and content management process, and along the way, helping marketing teams leverage what we believe is one of the most impactful assets and underutilized assets that they have at their fingertips, which is their speaker network. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Oh, very interesting. I love all of that. So let's set the stage a little bit. So Mike, walk me through a little bit of how you connected with John and Chris, and both of you, kind of how you're folding into the marketing ops community to make them successful. So let's set the stage a little bit, and then we're going to go into our question.
Yeah, for sure. So John and I...
Tell the real story, Mike.
Yeah. This is all about events, folks. So you're going to hear a lot about events today.
We love it.
And I think that's really important as you think about what's going on in the market, right? Like we're all remote, but we thrive when we're around other people. I mean,
100%.
Not everybody's like an extrovert, right? But I do think you learn the most. You have the best opportunity to grow your career and create the network when you're at events. And that's how I met John. I was at, SaaStr, like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was just randomly standing outside of one of the parties that was happening. And there was John, and we just got to talking. And he's like, hey, you should you should use my platform to do your thing. And I was like, hey, okay, that sounds like a great
I think
idea.
Mike was talking about, you were specifically talking about forums, right? Which like is kind of the world I live in. So I think I eavesdropped into that conversation.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I was talking about like web forms and issues with all kinds of stuff that happens. And should you have multiple forms on one side or not, all this other stuff. But yeah, that's how we met. And I was given the opportunity to test out his product, Excel Events, for web-based activities first, and eventually I grew into the chance of running Mopsapalooza, a big in-person event, and that's been our platform to be able to support us there very successfully. And then along the way, he introduced me to Chris, and Chris was like, it was funny actually. It was like a year and a half later or something. I called John. I was like standing outside of this venture studio that I work with. Called John. I go, I feel like you need to somehow think about activating the speakers more. Like we need more of like a CRM kind of thing. He's like, dude, you're spot on. Like there's all this stuff. And then Chris showed up one day.
Oh, I love that word.
Yes, this is what we need. That's how I got involved with the two of them. Basically.
Got it. Love that. So Chris, tell us a little bit more about your background, please.
So what's that?
A little bit about your background and what you're doing in this three-legged stool here.
Yeah, absolutely. We work closely with John at the Excel Events team, but essentially, we came to existence to really solve the initial problem of managing your speakers end to end, from speaker selection, evaluation to the onboarding and how you plug them into your agenda and having things that, like will identify conflicts in that. And so we streamline that process. And typically, if you don't have a tool to do that, it takes 5 to 7 hours per speaker. And, with a tool like ours, you'll probably save, 2 to 3 hours per speaker. So when you have 50, 100 speakers, it's a very simple and real ROI in that regard. But what has been fascinating for us, and Mike hit it on the head, is as we are really optimizing that workflow, what we found is that most marketing teams, 99.9% of marketing teams out there don't leverage their speakers because many times their event organizations is in silos. You'll have a tier 1 event team, you'll have a field marketing team, you'll have a webinar team, and you'll have a community team, and it's potentially broken up even more. And they're all doing their own things. They're even sourcing different tech across the board. So we really focus on consolidating all of those speakers across the board so that now I can actually say, hey, I need a speaker with an area of expertise in X, Y, and Z that potentially lives in wherever. I can pull that up and be able to find the ideal speaker for that, as opposed to, trying to pull a junior content person to, figure it out, or go and reach out to a busy event team member. And so then where it gets valuable is that we can take that information and sync it directly into like an Excel Events. So you're not worried about, exporting, importing, and then you get kind of best in class opportunity where you can utilize an amazing tool like Excel Events, and then you use a best in class speaker management platform like Session Board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're okay with it, Dion, just to be that like the practitioner in the room that's dealing with this stuff, that's both been now at a community-led organization that's focused on providing events and hopefully hosting successful events, but has also been on the sort of B2B SaaS side of things. For those of you out there in those different types of worlds, when you think about activating your advocates or working with your top customers and saying who could be involved, who's a great host for this webinar that we want to run, or just a guest speaker, right? It's that type of thinking is quite difficult to orchestrate inside of a traditional CRM, because your traditional CRM is purpose-built for managing your pipeline, right? Mm-hmm. And so you could probably hack your way to doing some of this stuff. And then you run into all kinds of hurdles. Speaking from the marketing operations person in me, you have permissions and, should they have access to certain objects inside of your CRM or not, right? Should they be able to deploy emails inside of your marketing automation tool or not? And these types of decisions that are really critical to business success. And when you actually give them an environment that integrates really nicely into your existing tech stack, you're enabling your team to have a better opportunity for strategic growth. And the same is true on the Excel event side, right?
Yeah.
When the data is flowing back from the system of record for a successful event, in terms of like what events are, what sessions were like most attended, the fact that a ticket was purchased, or, even if it's a free event, right? That registration data, I think typical webinar stuff, that type of orchestration layer matters. And when it integrates into your existing stack, you're enabling your team to have way more impact in ways that are no longer siloed, to sort of like pull on that thread for a second that Chris was talking about. This goes beyond just hosting like a paid event, right? Like you can use these environments for customer success initiatives and managing your sort of your go-to-market message through your biggest advocates, right? I don't want people to think in the silo of, oh, well, we don't host a conference, right?
Yeah.
You do all kinds of things that need guest speakers and need better data integration back to your CRM, and you don't want it to live directly in your CRM. Like it's a PIA. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's where, as John and our systems work better and better together, the type of data that we'll be able to start providing from a marketing activation front is really powerful. Like, I mean, we can get into some of the things that we're hearing, but this to me is like a major game changer for the event marketing world to really step up its game as marketers, and allowing the C-suite to see the value when you combine, the type of stuff that John's doing and this type of stuff that I'm doing. It gets really interesting.
So that's really interesting. So talk a little bit more about that, because where my brain is going is, and Mike, what you're talking about is you almost have this internal motion that you need to hold. Because I'm thinking about if for example, revenue enablement is hosting internal deal trainings or internal trainings of some sort, you almost want to treat those as your almost internal events. Yep. But then I also kind of heard you talking about some of these external events, whether it's paid or customer facing or whatever. So I think there's a lot of different use cases here, which kind of goes to, as of right now, I know we're in the middle of kickoff season and all that good stuff. So maybe irrespective of that or respective of that, what are you all hearing most in your conversations today? And what are people doing to address it, or how are they looking to address it successfully?
John has a ton of different use cases, because I'm very grateful to be on his board of customer advisors. And so I get to hear some of them too, but he hears way more than I do. So I would love to hear sort of what you're hearing in the market in terms of what people are trying to do with this kind of motion.
Yeah. I'm going to answer that slightly different. The most common thing we've been hearing is actually around professional services. And I think it's because event programs are expanding so much right now, in part because, beat up a dead horse here, but you've probably seen this week on LinkedIn all of the news around the SEO impact at HubSpot.
Yeah. So
with channels that have historically worked for a decade sort of falling down a little bit, people are turning to events, right? I mean, that's been around for centuries, and that motion has always worked. So as the event program is growing, teams are finding themselves in a position where they're spinning up more events, and they're turning to partners to take more of an active role in helping them facilitate that. And I mean, as much as we love working with agencies and very much do, there are some things that we're just able to do faster and cheaper when customers are working with us directly on that. The other part of that is, and Mike, I know you already got into this a bit, the depth of integration. It's not about just having an integration to market the fact that you have that, but that integration has to almost feel like a native experience for the users of the platform. And that's something that Chris and I are always striving to improve upon. It's something that, for example, we do very well with HubSpot to make sure that all of the data ends up where you need it to be. And that process is as seamless as it possibly can be. I'm probably on somewhere between 6 and 10 calls a week with a customer, just talking about what's the best way to situate this data once it gets into your CRM or marketing automation platform.
How are they looking to use that data then, John, right? Because what I'm hearing too is kind of this end-to-end programmatic approach, where it's, yes, we want to have this. However, we want to keep the momentum going. So is that data conversation in a broader context, so an overall purpose of how are we growing our organization?
I mean, it absolutely is. And that's a part, a big part of the conversations. What's the best way to structure that data so that we can prove the impact of our event program?
Got it.
And I think too often people turn to events and they look from a first touch attribution perspective. Events are not intended to be a lead gen exercise. There's 1,000 ways that we can get email addresses into our CRM. That's not the goal here, right? It's what can we do to influence, to build brand, to build loyalty, to build relationships with folks. Chris and I have been going around the country. Last year, we co-hosted 9 dinners in different cities, and the relationships that we built from that, the conversations that we were able to have and learn from is just, that doesn't happen any other way. I mean, Mike was talking about that before, how we got to know each other and got to partner because of that. So what we're trying to do is facilitate those opportunities. And as we collect that information, we need to enable event marketers to show the C-suite, show the CMO, the CFO, the impact of that program.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm hearing too is, Mike, what you were talking about earlier, and I know there's a lot of kerfuffle around the return to office and things of that nature, and I get that. But I think in addition to that, though, is we learn when we are in community with each other, and that community is always better when we are in person. And there's always a solution to get there, right? So I agree with you on that. I think in person definitely is better. And then the other thing I'm hearing too is, I agree with you, John, where events aren't lead gen. And so, because we're toying with the idea of doing our own event for Revenue by Design this year and in person. To your point, though, this isn't lead gen. This is about a workshop driven. Think about.
I don't want to say events are not lead gen, but they can't be looked at just from the position of lead gen.
It needs to be bigger, right?
And so
one of I run a couple of executive groups, and last year, now this year, is we all need to think bigger. And yes, we want to focus on our locus of control, but at the end of the day, it's what am I doing and how is it tying into a bigger piece? And so that's where thinking about Mike's events and the events we're doing is it's all about this human to human element. And think about doing, you took your team for an offsite. Well, think about doing that with 200 other people and 75 really smart trainers and consultants and speakers, right? And having that at your fingertips. So it's almost this depth of understanding and depth of experience that we're after at the end of the day that gets down into your soul, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And it's not just about building a relationship with your customers, but it's also about building a relationship with your partners.
Yes.
Right. And Mike, you guys do a great job of this at your event. And, Chris, we've talked about this before as well, but when you co-host an event with partners, you hear how each other pitches, you better understand when to bring that partner in, where those opportunities are. And again, building that relationship helps with the cross sell.
Yeah, I really think there aren't, I mean, maybe I don't see it or hear about it, right? Because it's not like I'm running any of these other events. but I know I personally have walked someone who was a sponsor at our event at Mopsapalooza over to the other sponsor. And I said, you two should probably partner. Yep. Right. Yep. And so, yeah, to your point, like it's absolutely about, the sort of better together story. And those things happen at these activations for in person. Not to say you can't host a really wildly successful, virtual experience that provides value to folks, but they'll probably run it in the background and they'll work and
do laundry,
all that kind of stuff.
That virtual experience is great for content delivery.
Yeah, but
that's different than the networking opportunities that you might be able to facilitate in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would love to pull. Sorry, Dion, I'm totally taking over and asking questions that I shouldn't be asking.
You're fine.
I just get so curious. You ask your next question.
Okay, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
So, Chris, how about you as it relates to some of the conversations you're having on a weekly basis? What are you hearing as the number one topic, and what are people doing about it? And maybe how are you helping with them?
Yeah, I mean, outside of AI for everything, I mean,
this is actually not me. AI.
Yeah. Stargate, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hearing a number of things, but I think two things jump out at me. So when I talk to marketers, it's like, why is outbound getting harder and harder? And then when I talk to event marketers, it's like, to John's point, it's like, how can I do more with what I have? Because it's not like they're getting an influx of resources or they just feel overwhelmed. Because logistics of events, whether they're in person or webinars, it just takes time. And so, kind of really trying to dive into the answers for those is, I think the event marketer has to start to figure out how to solve the marketer's problem for them to actually be elevated even more in the organization. And, you guys hit it on the head about what events are. Events are a way to capture attention, whether, no matter where they're at in the funnel. But I think what's been interesting for me as I dig into this concept of, the outbound problem is it's always been hard, but I think it's gotten I wish I had real data on this. I heard the founder of Medium talking about some of this stuff, but I think over the last few years, we've seen this massive influx of content due to AI generated content. So we've just saturated the market with, content that is pretty average. It's not based on anything. And now you look at actually what Google's doing with their algorithm, and they're really establishing what they call the Google EAT framework. And they're starting to build up content that has experience, expertise, authority, trust. Well, what is that? That's your speakers. And your speakers are your subject matter experts, your influencers, they're your thought leaders, they're your content generators because they are generating content. And your speakers bring a network, to be honest. And so now you have a trifecta. If you can, turn your attention from event marketing is just this logistical thing that we used to do on the side to actually they are sitting on an asset that we need to harvest and we need to build relationships with, right? And that to me is where we're really diving in into that component and saying, okay, well, let's first do the hardest thing is help you consolidate all of that in one place so that you can leverage those folks as opposed to a junior content person that's just writing with no experience or ChatGPT that's starting to spit out the same stuff because the learning models aren't, growing as fast as the content delivery is. So it's really an interesting problem. And I think it starts with being able to harvest and leverage that speaker network. And that's where we're, really focused. But the beauty of having a partner like John is I can be focused on that while allowing him to do the other hard work, which is all of the customer facing components that, it takes to really have a great event program. And an event program can be everything from your tier 1 in-person conference to the dinners that we're doing to a webinar, whether it's digital or in person. I don't really think it fully matters if it's all intertwined together. Like the things that John and I, what we're talking about doing is taking those 9 dinners, actually taking the expertise that we're learning from the 9 dinners, putting that into a white paper and then doing a webinar about the white paper. And then you actually take the information that you're getting from the attendees in that white paper and the webinars and producing another white paper. And now we have more information that we can take back to a dinner.
And the big part of that though, Chris, is that all of the content is coming from experts,
yes.
Right? It's not coming from ChatGPT. It's not coming from interns who are asked to write something. Right. It's truly delivering value. And I think if you look at what you guys are doing, if you look at what we're doing, it all boils down to one simple concept, which is let's make it easier for people to create experiences that actually add value. And that's why we love working with you guys, because we can help deliver the event. You can help the organizers figure out what content to deliver.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll say that's kind of aside, but I heard one of our other partners talk about this is if we actually focus on buying attention, how much does it cost to, kind of get in front of and stay in front of a prospect or a customer? Well, an event allows you to do that for 9 hours a day. If you're in person at your conference, I mean, how valuable is that to really take time to kind of flush out your solution, their problem and all of that. And to try to do that
such a good equation to try to figure out.
This is why I hate the idea of looking at events as a lead gen mechanism. Because if you're going to look at it just from the cost per lead, cost per click, you're going to get destroyed, right?
Right.
But a 9-hour experience is a vastly different way of engaging with somebody than showing them an ad on LinkedIn where they fill out a quick form.
Yeah.
Like that memory sticks with them for another 9 months.
Yes. How well do you think, though, people treat their events as an event versus an experience? Sorry, Chris, such a quick question.
No, go for it. Go for it.
So that was the question, right? Is the difference between people treating their events like a lead gen or treating it like an experience?
Well,
and then
that's
between your thoughts.
That's where I think we have to do, the event marketing world has to do a better job of ingraining themselves in the marketing conversation. So this is seen as an effective delivery mechanism of the marketing strategy, right? Number one, I'm actually leveraging that speaker network that I have to like inform what my content strategy is. And then I have all of these components, whether it's marketing or whether it's digital or whatever it is, as an opportunity to distribute. And I can't see an event as this one-time thing. I have to see it as a component of a 365 overall business growth strategy, or whatever you want to call it. But I think too many times it's like the logistics of events have put them in a box, in a corner, that make it so hard to actually bring it over. And now we have something like, ChatGPT that we just want to lean on because it's easier, but easier is not the road to revenue.
Totally. I love that.
No, I completely agree, Mike.
I think the part that just, for me, again, just going back to that marketing ops, rev ops person in me, is this orchestration layer. And I don't know if either of the two of you are seeing, more and more folks in roles like ours, people from our community who are practicing marketing operations, act as those, strategic orchestrators. But at the end of the day, the delivery mechanism for what you're talking about, Chris, right, is you've got a go-to-market plan, and maybe for the year, from sort of a product messaging perspective, whether you have a SaaS product or a service, you have a core assumption, a bet you're making. And maybe there's 2 or 3 of them, right, topically, that you're going to try to put out into the market that you need to test and validate. Well, there's lots of ways to go test and validate that on the digital front. And we've been doing that for a long time. There's blogs, there's social media content, there's your paid advertising routes, and you can get some pretty quick real-time feedback on that. And the long tail of your blog is that you hope that your SEO value goes up. And then you've got events to add on to that. And for whatever reason, we've not treated that layer of data that can come from this type of activation as a core feedback loop, right? So to John's point, like, it's not just about lead gen, and it's not just about your brand. It's also about the, again, Chris, like the broader go-to-market strategy. And if you want to be sort of like straight to the point for those of you that get to watch this, if you want someone to help you activate that data layer, you need to pull in someone who understands your go-to-market tech stack and how to plug it all together. And I will argue that that is a marketing operations person every single day of the week. And they can see that, oh, I understand your core pillars of messaging this year are these broader topics. I understand now that there needs to be a layer of speakers who can speak to those. So I need to be able to understand, what was their performance like? Based on Chris's rating system that falls into Session Board, I'm going to be able to understand in the future who should be brought in for future activations. Based on John's ability to feedback from attendees who were there, hey, length of visit, their rating, all that stuff. That's a feedback loop for, is my message landing? And it's way better than your paid advertising and your social media clicks and likes and reposts and your social posts in general, right? Like, so anyway, you need to work with a go-to-market technologist to stitch your broader go-to-market strategy together across your tech stack. This is about, like, yes, this is about events, but it's about the whole system for go-to-market.
Yeah, and you need a tech
that's
stack
what
that
I wanted to pull on.
facilitates and gives you the ability to actually do that and get that information in a way that you can make use of it.
Right. That's the thread I wanted to pull on just for a second. Maybe it was more like a whatever they call it, a box, a soapbox that I wanted to stand on and yell from. So I guess I'll come down off of it now.
No. I think that was good. I think it's about the harmonization of the components to achieve your orchestration layer. And I think it comes from understanding kind of the pieces on the board that you all have and you're providing for folks. And we're at the point now where I feel like technology maybe existed, but it wasn't very easy to use. And so we're at the point now where technology is allowing us to move to the proverbial chess versus checkers game, right? And is there versus, oh my gosh, yes, I've got data, but now I've got to export it to Excel or Google Sheets because I don't have the technology to do it. So that's what I'm hearing, is the technology and the people behind it are there at the end of the day. And Chris, what I heard you saying was really diving into the how. We have the what, we have the why. but it's how are we bringing all these pieces together? How are our speakers enforcing this message? How is our platform helping us with this? Right. So that's what I'm hearing too, is again, this kind of mashup and machination to achieve those goals at the end of the day. And it exists finally, clearly, as what you all are doing. So I love that.
I think it does. And that's where, if you want to talk about AI, like, go ahead and stitch AI into the equation now that you are able to get all these data loops back and start to understand it faster. Because I mean, it will be better at it than a human.
Absolutely.
So that part, go for it. But don't go create a bunch of content. Please stop.
Please stop. Very good. Wonderful. Well, Chris, we're going to wrap up here. Where can people get a hold of you? Where should they go to find more information on Session Board?
Yeah, if they want to email, they can email me at chris@sessionboard.com. They can go to sessionboard.com to get more info. And those are the two best places.
I love that. And we'll have that available here as well. John, how about you?
Yeah, I'm all over LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Jonathan Kazarian on LinkedIn. And then you can also find us at excelevents.com.
I love it. I love it. I've used your platform with Mike. Love it. Thank you. I have to do the shout out. It's actually really, really fantastic. Mike, how about you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can email me, mike@marketingops.com, or visit marketingops.com and find me in our community pretty easily. So
yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. For those of you that are in this world, make sure you are connecting with Mike. Make sure you're connecting with John and Chris. Get after it. There are resources out there to elevate everything you're doing. So make sure you're doing that. We look forward to having you join us for our next week's Workout Wednesday. We're having Cy with Hyperbound join us, that you can actually learn how his technology can help your reps role play. And of course, we'll be back next week with Rev Shots. Make it a great day, everybody. Thank you so much.